Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is episode 11 of my little big year where I'm trying to find and photograph as many birds as possible here on my home patch in eastern Massachusetts. Way back in March, I set myself a target of seeing 125 species by the end of the year. And in the most recent episode, the count had reached a total of 117 species, so just 8 more to go. So I'm going to just cut to the chase right now and let you know that we are going to add 8 more new species in this episode and reach the target of 125 species. Just to keep a little bit of suspense and mystery though, I'm going to tell you that number 125 is a really good bird. It's a bird that's very unusual on my home patch and also anywhere in Massachusetts for that matter. And furthermore, it's not the bird that's pictured in the thumbnail image for this video. So if you want to see what number 125 is, then stay tuned and we'll get there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First bird that we're going to add is this spotted sandpiper. I got some nice footage of this bird. This is one of the regular shorebird species that we have here at Horn Pond. Spotted sandpipers actually don't like mud. They prefer to be on gravel and rocky areas like you see here. And we always have some of that habitat here at Horn Pond, so we generally get those every year. Spotted sandpipers have kind of a funny habit of bobbing their tails up and down as they walk, which is pretty distinctive. Just a reminder that the number that you see in the lower right-hand corner of the screen next to my channel logo is the channel life list. So that's just a list of all the birds that I've been able to photograph well and show on the channel. So I started these videos this year. So right now the little big year list and the channel list don't have much separation. They're pretty close. That's obviously going to change in the future. Here's some footage of another shorebird species that is sometimes confused with spotted sandpiper. This is a solitary sandpiper. Solitary sandpipers are already on the list. We added them back in May. They also have a habit of bobbing their tails up and down like spotted sandpipers, and that can lead to some confusion. Here's a nice close-up of a double-crested cormorant. They've been regular here all summer, although not in large numbers. Next new bird to add to the list is common raven. I got a few photos of a common raven when one flew over my head a few months ago. Been sort of waiting to get some video, but they are sporadic and uncommon here, and actually we always see them as flyovers, not perched. So I figured my chances of getting video were kind of low, so we might as well just go ahead and count it now. In this photo, you can clearly see the wedge-shaped tail that the raven has. That's probably the most reliable field mark for separating it from crows, which have a very different shape to the tail. The community garden area has started to deliver up some good birds, as it does every late summer and fall. It's a good place for photography because all the birds are at eye level. There's a family of house wrens that's taken up residence out there in the garden, and that's our next new bird for the year. This one is an adult. And this noisy little fellow is an immature. You can see he still has some tufts of the gray fledgling feathers that haven't fully been replaced yet. I suspect he's temporarily lost track of his parents and is trying to find them. Goldfinches are probably the most numerous species in the garden right now. House finches are also quite common. I was happy with this photo of a hummingbird. I think it looks better to see him feeding from a flower rather than a feeder. This is a thistle flower that it's feeding on, so basically just a weed. So if you saw my previous Little Big Year episode, you know that I was very excited about the low water levels and the mudflats that had opened up and given us habitat for shorebirds. And we actually added 3 nice new shorebirds to the list in that episode. Well, since that time, it has rained a lot and the water levels have come back up. So at this point, it's back to being a lagoon rather than a mudflat. This is what the area looks like now. Good habitat for ducks, not so much for shorebirds. But fortunately, before that happened, I was able to photograph 2 more good shorebird species out on the mudflats, and so we'll add those now. So the first of these shorebird species to add is this semi-palmated plover. He's a cute little guy who looks like a miniature killdeer. In fact, in this photo, I managed to have the semi-palmated plover in the foreground and a killdeer in the background, and you can see that it is about half the size or even less. The other new shorebird species is this semi-palmated sandpiper. This is a good example of a bird that is pretty abundant along the coast in migration, but much less common inland, and we're about 10 miles inland here on my home patch. Generally, we find semi-palmated sandpipers sprinkled in with flocks of least sandpipers, and that was the case with this bird. You can see that this bird has black legs, whereas least sandpipers have yellowish legs. So here's some recent footage that I got of a least sandpiper where you can see the yellow legs. Least sandpipers also tend to have a warmer tan color, while semi-palmateds are more grayish. So you can usually tell them apart pretty easily when there's a mixed flock. It's when you see just a single bird that the ID is more tricky. One issue that comes up is that the yellow legs of the least sandpiper get covered in mud and look black. Here's an example of that. The legs of this least sandpiper are muddy almost all the way up to the body. This little clip of a lesser yellow legs kind of sums up the situation we had in my home patch in mid-August. Lots of rain and rising water levels. Thought it was kind of funny the way he's scratching himself like a dog. Okay, so the next bird is kind of a funny one. It's a good example of how a bird can be pretty common generally in an area, but hard to find on your specific home patch. And what I'm talking about here is pigeons, just your basic feral rock pigeon. They're actually pretty uncommon at Horn Pond. I've gone whole years where I've only had 1 or 2 sightings of pigeons, and normally they're just zooming by overhead, flying fast on their way to get somewhere else. A few weeks ago, a friend of mine texted me that he had a pigeon perched up on the power lines that run right through the middle of my home patch. So I rushed over. It was a cloudy and rainy day, but fortunately the pigeon was still there. And I managed to get some shaky video of kind of low quality and some slightly better photos of the pigeon. And not only was that a new one for the Little Big Year list, but that's actually the first time I've ever photographed a pigeon on my home patch. So I was kind of excited about that. I don't know if anybody else gets excited about that, but you know, that's birding for you. This eastern phoebe was posed up nicely. He's already on the list, but this is better footage than I was able to get earlier. Wood ducks have been regular all year. This is a female with her nearly full-grown family. And this is a male in non-breeding plumage. They're also already on the list. I've shown them a few times now. Okay, so the next new bird, which is number 124 for the year, is a really nice sighting that I just sort of bumped into. It was late in the day and I was heading out and I was just passing by a little area where I rarely see anything interesting, and I glanced in there and there was a raptor perched up at eye level on a snag. My first thought was that it was going to be a red-tailed hawk because they're so common here, but I quickly realized that this was actually a broad-winged hawk. I've had a few distant sightings this year of broad-winged hawks, but I've never had such a good sighting of a perched bird. Well, that was a nice opportunity to see him spread his feathers. Okay, that broad-winged hawk was a really cool sighting. And now we are at 124 and we have only one more to go. So let's just go ahead and finish this up. So I was with a group of other birders and we had this bird perched up and it looked very interesting. This is the initial views that we were getting. The bird was perched up on a dead tree pretty far away and was facing away from us in difficult lighting conditions. Do you have any idea what this bird is? Even though this video footage here isn't very good, you can see that there's a white patch on the back of the bird, and that's a good field mark. So we moved around to the other side and we managed to re-find the bird in better light. And this confirmed that we were seeing an olive-sided flycatcher. This is an uncommon species in Massachusetts, and it's only the second one I've ever seen here on my home patch. So I would say that olive-sided flycatcher is the second most uncommon bird that we have added to the Little Big Year list this year, with the number one bird being the yellow-crowned night heron that we had way back in episode 4. So that was a great way to get number 125 for the year. So maybe I should have been a little more aggressive back in March when I set the target for the year, but I wasn't sure how many birds I was actually going to be able to photograph and video well, as opposed to just seeing them, and so that's why I was a little bit conservative. But anyways, the target for the year is to see as many birds as possible, not just to get to 125. So I'm going to continue on. I should be able to get several more birds by the end of the year, and that'll give me the opportunity to make some more videos. By the way, in the description for this video, I've put a link that goes to a file which has my entire Little Big Year list, all 125 species, just in case anyone would be interested in looking at that. So that's a wrap for this episode. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.